What if overnight, all Earth's ice vanished? The shocking consequences await. Earth is the only planet in the solar system that we know of that has ice on it. Even though it's not everywhere, it's still pretty widespread. But what if overnight all the ice on the planet just vanished? It would cause some major changes to the world as we know it, from extreme weather events to rising sea levels and even the end of human civilization. Here are 10 shocking things that would happen if all the ice on Earth suddenly disappeared. Number 10. Extreme weather. We all know that ice can have a big impact on our weather. Just think of how much snow fell last winter or how bad the flooding was after the ice thawed. But what would happen if all the ice on Earth disappeared? Well, it turns out that this could cause some extreme weather events. For example, since there wouldn't be any more frozen water vapor in the atmosphere, it would lead to an increase in cloud cover and precipitation. On top of that, with no ice to reflect sunlight back into space, the Earth's surface would get much warmer. This would lead to more evaporation and thus more clouds and precipitation. But it would also lead to more extreme weather events such as hurricanes, floods, and droughts. So if you thought the weather was bad now, just wait until all the ice on Earth melts. Number 9. No more frozen frogs. Frogs are known for their ability to survive in all sorts of environments. They can live in ponds, lakes, rivers, and even rainforests. But what about when they freeze? Can frogs survive being frozen? As it turns out, some frogs can actually freeze and then thaw out without dying. These frogs are known as freeze-tolerant frogs, and they make up about 1% of all frog species. But how do they do it? Well, these frogs have special adaptations that allow them to slow down their metabolism and basically put their body's functions on pause while they're frozen. This allows them to survive without oxygen and at extremely low temperatures. However, not all frogs are freeze-tolerant, and many other animals rely on ice to survive. For example, polar bears need ice to hunt seals and penguins need ice to build their nests. If all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished, many animals would likely die, including many species of frogs. Number 8. More rocks. If all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished, we would see a lot more rocks. You might be thinking, what does all that ice have to do with rocks? Well, a lot of places on Earth have ice that covers up rock. For example, Glacier can carve out entire valleys of rock. And permafrost, which is ground that's frozen year-round, can preserve entire ecosystems. But what happens when all that ice melts? Well, we would see a lot more bare rock. This could have a big impact on the environment. For example, bare rock can absorb more heat from the sun than snow and ice, which could lead to more melting and more bare rock. On top of that, bare rock is more likely to erode, which could change the shape of the Earth itself. In other words, if all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished, we would see some major changes in the makeup of the planet. Number 7. The sun would shine brighter. The sun is the center of our solar system and provides us with light and heat. But what would happen if the sun suddenly got brighter? Well, anything living on Earth would likely die. Plants would burn up, animals would be cooked alive, and humans would get skin cancer. But what does this have to do with ice? Well, it turns out that ice reflects a lot of sunlight back into space. This is why areas that are covered in snow and ice tend to be very cold. The ice reflects the sunlight before it can warm up the ground. But what happens when all the ice melts? Well, more sunlight hits the ground and it gets warmer. This means that if all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished, the sun would shine brighter. So make sure to wear your sunscreen. Number 6. Goodbye, glacier. Glacier are massive bodies of ice that form over hundreds or even thousands of years. They can be found in places like Greenland, Antarctica, and Iceland. But what happens when glacier melt? Well, they can cause rising sea levels, changing weather patterns, and even earthquakes. For example, when the ice from glacier melts, it adds more water to the ocean, which can cause sea levels to rise. This can lead to coastal flooding and erosion. It can also disrupt ocean currents, which can change the weather in different parts of the world. Additionally, the melting of glacier can cause earthquakes because the weight of the ice can cause the Earth to shake. So if all the glacier on Earth suddenly melted, we would see some major changes, both good and bad. Number 5. A whole new world. It's hard to imagine, but all the ice on Earth could one day disappear. What would that mean for our world? How would it change the way we live? And what would happen to the environment? We can use fiction to help us explore these questions. For example, the book and movie The Day the Earth Stood Still imagines a world where all the ice on Earth has melted. In this world, the poles are no longer covered in ice and the climate is much warmer. Because of the loss of ice, sea levels have risen and most of the world's cities are underwater. Humans have had to flee to higher ground and live in makeshift shelters. In this new world, humans have to learn to adapt to the changing environment and find a way to survive. The story explores themes of climate change and the importance of protecting the environment. It's a cautionary tale that warns us of what could happen if all the ice on Earth one day disappears. Number 4. Frozen wastelands. If all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished, we would be left with a lot of frozen wastelands. You might be thinking, what does all that ice have to do with wastelands? Well, a lot of places on Earth are covered in ice because they're so cold. For example, the Arctic and Antarctic are frozen wastelands because it's so cold there. But what happens when all the ice melts? Well, we would be left with a lot of barren land. This could have a big impact on the environment. For example, barren land is more likely to experience erosion, which could change the shape of the Earth itself. On top of that, barren land is not very hospitable to life. So many animals and plants would likely die off if all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished. Number 3. More lakes and rivers. If all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished, we would have a lot more lakes and rivers. You might be thinking, what does all that ice have to do with lakes and rivers? Well, a lot of places on Earth have ice covering up bodies of water. For example, many lakes and rivers freeze over in the winter. But what happens when all the ice melts? Well, we would see a lot more open water. This could have a big impact on the environment. For example, more open water means more places for fish to live and more places for people to go swimming. It could also lead to more evaporation, which could lead to more clouds and rain. Additionally, more open water could also lead to more dangerous bodies of water like whirlpools and rapids. Number 2. Animals would die. Animals need water to survive. Without water, they can quickly become dehydrated and die. But what does all that ice have to do with water? Well, a lot of places on Earth have ice covering up bodies of water, like glacier and frozen lakes. But what happens when all the ice melts? Well, we would see a lot more open water. This could be great for some animals, but for others, it could spell disaster. For example, animals that live in places like the Arctic and Antarctic could die off because their habitat would change so drastically. Additionally, many animals rely on ice to get around. For example, polar bears use ice to hunt for fish and penguins use ice to build their nests. So if all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished, many animals would likely die. Number 1. Humans would die. As we've seen, the ice on Earth plays a vital role in our survival. From regulating the climate to providing water, ice is essential for life as we know it. Without ice, the world would be a very different place and humans would likely die off. But what would cause the ice on Earth to vanish? Well, it could happen gradually due to climate change, or it could happen suddenly due to a massive asteroid impact. Whatever the cause, the consequences would be devastating for humans. We would lose our homes, our food, and our very survival. The ice on Earth may seem like a distant, unchanging part of our planet, but it's important to remember that it's fragile and vital to our existence. We must do everything we can to protect it. Thanks for watching. What do you think would happen if all the ice on Earth suddenly vanished? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos. See you next time.